Hi guys, well it's been quite a few weeks since we last spoke, and quite a lot's happened in that time. As some of you may know, I was over in the States to attend my first Chicagoland Toy Soldier show, organised by our good friend Matt Murphy of Hobby Bunker. I have to say I had a great time. It was a new location, new hotel, still in Schaumburg on the outskirts of Chicago, but there was a terrific turnout of all kinds of dealers selling all kinds of toy soldiers and all things related to that, including quite a lot of King Country. Now, I didn't actually take any displays over to the show itself. This was really just a chance for me to do a quick reconnaissance of the new hotel and to see what the show was like. And as I say, I'm happy to report it was a great success. I think Matt and his team really worked themselves ragged, putting together a really great show. It was a lot of fun, a very good turnout, especially on the Sunday, which is the main show day. But even before that, certainly on the Thursday and Friday, I beg your pardon, on the Friday and Saturday before the show, I saw quite a number of rooms open, and there was all kinds of great room trading going on. So have to say I thoroughly enjoyed that. After Chicago, I went down to Texas, ostensibly to have a special event in Texas at the King Country Texas store, and we had a whole raft of people who had been invited and were coming along, including friends from different parts of the States that came in to come to the show. Unfortunately, however, while after about 2 days in Texas, I suddenly discovered I had COVID. And this was a bit of a shock because I thought I'd escaped the whole epidemic thing. And for about a week, I was laid low with the dreaded COVID. However, on the plus side, I did get to stay an extra week in Texas, which is always fun, especially in San Antonio. However, we had to cancel our special event, and we'll have to postpone it till next year. So apologies to all of our friends and collectors that had been coming to that event, and I'm so sorry that we had to disappoint you. I was looking forward to it as well, but these things happen, and none of us are superhuman, and that especially includes me. Anyway, here we are today. We're back in Hong Kong, and I'm happy to say, as you probably noticed, right next to me here are our upcoming Tiger tanks, or as we say, the Kursk Tigers. Now, what I can tell you about the Battle of Kursk, this was one of the pivotal battles of the Second World War, and perhaps even the pivotal battle of the war in the Eastern Front. It happened in July 1943. It involved more than 6,000 tanks, German and Russian. In fact, that was the biggest ever tank battle up until that point in history. And in fact, I think it's the biggest tank battle that has ever happened since that time. So even the wars of the Middle East that involved tanks, and they were pretty big affairs in the 1960s and 70s, pale in comparison to the Battle of Kursk. 6,000 tanks were involved, 4,000 aircraft, more than 2 million infantry soldiers from both Russian and German. It was a huge affair. Now, why Kursk? Why July 1943? Well, a few months earlier, in March 1943, there was a huge salient in the German defense line, and this huge Russian salient really forced its way into the German lines, and Hitler and his generals decided that this had to be destroyed, and by destroying the salient they would be able to shorten their own line, build up their own defences, and make it much harder for the Russians to counterattack against them. The general in charge of the German defences was one of the best, Field Marshal Erich von Manstein. Now, he actually wanted to set the wheels in motion in March, or as close to March as possible, to catch the Russians by surprise. Hitler, however, wanted to delay the offensive, mainly because he wanted to wait for the brand new, or relatively new, very powerful, heavy German tanks that were coming on stream from the factories in Germany. And of course, the two tanks involved were the famous Panther and the Panzerkampfwagen VI, which we all know much better as the Tiger. So Hitler asked for a delay, or didn't ask, Hitler never asked. He told his generals that the offensive was to be delayed until June 1943. However, all kinds of difficulties meant that they still didn't have all the numbers they needed, and it was delayed again by another month until early July 1943. By that time, of course, the Russians had got all kinds of intelligence about what the Germans were up to, and during those few months between March and July had built up their own defences in the Kursk salient. And in fact, they'd built several different defence lines where they had installed more than 20,000 artillery guns, as well as over 1 million of their own men to defend it. And they also had, obviously, their own tanks that would take on the Germans. So, why was Kursk so important? Well, I've mentioned before, it's a huge bulge into the German line, but it was also a major transportation hub for railway and roads in that part of what was then the Soviet Union. So it was by biting off the salient and by shortening the German line, it would make things much or the Germans felt it would make it much easier for them to defend that area, and much harder for the Russians that were attacking. I'll go on to my next point here. Forgive me, I'll put on my specs to get a couple of points. Now, I've mentioned before that by this time the Germans were well aware, and I should say the Russians were well aware of what the German plan was. And this is just a partial explanation, it's not the whole story of the Battle of Kursk. But as I mentioned earlier, the important thing was it was the first major introduction on the Eastern Front of the new Panthers and Tiger tanks. And what we've chosen to do is the second of our recently released all-metal, all-singing, all-dancing Tiger tanks. We decided to do two Tiger tanks from the same unit, Waffen SS Division Das Reich, and they were part of the Waffen SS tank divisions that took part in the southern part of the Kursk salient. Now what we've got here is the two Kursk Tigers themselves. If you look carefully, you'll see that although the colour scheme is the same, that there's obviously a different painting camouflage pattern for each tank, and there's also two individual tank crew members for each tank. So we've got two different tank crews, and obviously the hull numbers, although they belong to the same unit, are, as I think, S32 and its stablemate S33. Both tanks are limited to just 250 special editions. Each comes in the box that you see here, another beautiful packaged box, and each comes with its own individual numbered certificate from 001 to 250. These will be available, well, the first supplies will be available, I hope, in the beginning of November this year. In fact, our staff here and myself will be going up to the factory to we always do a sort of quality examination to make sure that everything is as good as it should be, and so that when you get the model it'll be in perfect condition. But we like to do eyes on at the factory at that time. I'm I'm really pleased with how this particular Tiger has come out again. I do like the two colour camouflage. I think it's obviously slightly different from our first edition, which had the winter, and I'm happy to say that I believe I'm right in saying almost 350 of these tanks are already pre-ordered. So it's only an edition of 500, as I say, 250 of each. So this is your chance to get your model. Either pick one, it would be nice if you pick both, but however, that's up to you. But it's a great model. I'm very, very happy with how it came out. I think it's camouflage wise, it's amazingly different from our winter Tiger, but again, a chance to do something a little bit different, and I hope something that you guys like. And again, another thing is, people often say, why do you do so many Tigers? Well, part of the reason, and I've said this before, is that many new collectors that come into the hobby, especially if they're into World War II, and especially if they're into World War II German, our experience in both our shop in Cane Country, Texas and San Antonio, and our shop right here in Hong Kong in Pacific Place, is that when new collectors come in, they're interested in World War II Germans, the one tank they always ask for is the Tiger tank. They may not know many of the other tanks, but they always seem to know the Tiger tank. Hence the reason we've done this. And should give you a little shout out that next year we'll be bringing out the Afrika Korps Tiger, but in between these two and the Kursk Tigers and the Afrika Korps Tiger, I'm also excited to say we're bringing out our very own D-Day Sherman tank. And at the moment we're working on the All-American D-Day Sherman tank, an M4A3 model. Again, like these, virtually all metal, moving tracks, full suspension, opening hatches, and comes with crew figures. And in fact, not just the crew figures that go in the top turret, but we'll have additional figures that you can buy. I think there's another 10 figures available that you'll be able to buy standing, kneeling, sitting, you name it, that you can add on to your Sherman tank. So I'm not ready to show you any photographs of the painted. We've just got our all metal casting of the tank, but as soon as we've got a painted version for you, you guys will be the first to know. So in the meantime, just like to say, great to be back in Hong Kong, great to speak with you again. It was even nicer to meet so many of our collectors in Chicago. I really enjoyed the show. Can't wait to go back next year, and hope that perhaps next year we can actually take part and bring some examples of our work then. But in the meantime, thanks for watching. Hope there's something that you like, and if you've got any questions, queries or suggestions, we always like to hear them. Drop me a line or pick up the phone or whatever. Always happy to speak to you. Thanks again, and see you next time.